want to go over a few things about watercolor. So this isn't necessarily how to paint with watercolor. This is how to use watercolor and how to practice with watercolor before you start painting. So there's a couple of things I want to point out. One thing is when you're painting, you should always have a test strip. And the test strip, you want to have it in the same paper that you're painting on, so you can see the texture, you can see the color, you can wipe off excess, you can experiment a little bit on the side if you're not sure about what you're doing. So you always have want to have one of these, and I use them until they're completely full, and then I get rid of them. Other things, if you want to paint on the road, you should get a small little palette and repurpose a small little jar. So this was some diced pimentos, and once I was done using them, I just cleaned it out. And this is something that I'll take with me if I'm on the road or going into coffee shops and stuff like that because it's very small and compact. Uh, you can get plastic, but glass is best because you can wipe off that watercolor and not contaminate your brush when you're going into it. So these are really useful. These you can find anywhere. You can find them at Walmart, uh, Hobby Lobby, Michaels. You can order them on Amazon. You can find these all over the place. Anywhere they sell art supplies, they'll have something like this. And then you have the bigger version. And the bigger version is one of these. And they do have big giant trays for watercolor. You don't really need those unless you're doing big, massive watercolor pieces. Something like this size will usually serve your purposes. And in this case, you see there's a lot of colors on here. So I was doing some paintings. All I did was rehydrate some of the colors just to use it for the demo so I'm not wasting any colors. The other thing is when you're practicing, you don't need expensive watercolors. When you're practicing, you're just learning how everything flows, how everything works together. So you're better off using a cheaper brand of watercolor. And then when you decide that you're going to start painting in watercolor, then you want to use some nicer ones. So I always have 2 to 3 grades of watercolor colors with me at home. So I have the ones that I do the demos with. So those are usually cheaper watercolors. And then I have my nicer ones that I do for demos for class. And then I have my really nice watercolors that I'll do for illustrations. So that's that. Here's my bigger jar. This was repurposed from Miss Garlic. And again, I like the size, but a nice big glass jar, heavy duty, will work great for you. I have a small little water bottle with water spray bottle. And again, if I want to create like little texture techniques, this is good. This is an eyedropper. This is a glass eyedropper, and it's a really skinny one. They have the bigger plastic ones, but I don't like the way they work when I want to do certain techniques. So I generally try to find these small, skinny ones to use. And then if you're going to use ink, you want to use waterproof ink. So when you're painting, the ink won't bleed. Now, if you're not going to use waterproof ink, then what you want to do is you want to make sure that you draw your lines dark enough to come through the watercolor, and then when everything is completely dry, you just ink on top of that, and it'll work fine. There's two main kinds of brushes that you're going to use. One's called a flat, and it's a flat brush. And these come in all kinds of sizes from an eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch, half an inch, 2 inches. They just get bigger and bigger. And then your second type of brush that you have is a round, and it just comes to a round point. And again, they have all kinds of different sizes. So here's one that's really thin. They have little tiny thin ones. They have long thin ones. And then this one right here, you can see how it's coming apart a little bit, how it's widening out. And when your brushes start to do this, all you have to do is dip it in water, put it in your hand, just put that crease of your hand, and just roll it, and it'll come to a nice point. Now, when your brushes stop doing this, it's time just to get rid of the brush, or you keep it to the side if you want to do like dry brush techniques. So sometimes keep your older brushes just to see if you could do any textural stuff. If not, just toss it. So that's pretty much everything here. Oh yeah, always want to have a paper towel. Almost forgot. And then the other thing I like to have is a tissue paper. Couple of reasons. I can lift color up with the tissue paper if I need to lighten something. I can also do textural effects with this. So a tissue paper is also really handy to have around. So that's it for the slides. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get into doing a little bit of a demo. Okay, so I zoomed in. I'm going to do a couple little quick demos, make sure that I stay on camera. I'm just going to use my round here. And the one thing I want to do is I'm just going to do some flat washes. One important thing to know about watercolor is it'll only go where the water is. So I'm going to use this like little orangish color I have and like a little bit of orange, a little bit of brown mixed in, and I'm going to make some dirty water. Now, dirty water is like a really watered down version of the color you're going to use. And the reason I want to do that is I want to be able to see where I'm putting water down. So if you're just putting clear water down, you're not going to be able to really see where you're painting. And the reason we do this is it helps the flow of the paint on the paper. And then the second thing is once you have water down, when you apply paint, it's only going to go where the water is. So it's not going to go everywhere. Now, this really only works when everything else around it is dry. Otherwise, if you do this against something that's wet, you will get a bleed. And, and I'm not trying to be perfect on this. If this is just a little demo. And so what you want to do is you want to come in and just lay these colors in nice and flat. And you can see how they'll just spread out nice and smooth. So there's one. And I'm going to do one with a different color. I'm going to come in with the blue. So I'm going to wipe off my brush, come in with the blue. Again, create a little bit of dirty water. And I just want to be able to see where I'm doing this. When you're practicing, this is a good time to practice control. Like I said, you're not learning how to paint with watercolors as far as doing an illustration, but you're learning like skill sets. So I'm going to put that color down, and I'm going to do my best to stay in that circle. So practice things like this control, and then I'm going to come in and apply my paint. Now, this is uh, this is something I often say in my classroom, right? What's the main ingredient in watercolor? The main ingredient in watercolor is water. So if something is too dark, you add water. If something is too light, you add more pigment. Um, the one thing you don't want to do, and the one mistake most people make when they're starting is when they paint with watercolor, they almost make it like a paste because they might be familiar with tempera paint or acrylic, something they might have used growing up, and they just make a mess out of it. So you don't want your watercolor to be like toothpaste. You don't want it to be muddy and thick. Water is the key ingredient. So if you want to paint something that is opaque, a little bit thicker, a little bit more viscous, use acrylic, use tempera. And then I'm just going to do my last one. So on this one, uh, I have that ink that I did, and I just wanted to put that down just to illustrate that the ink is waterproof. One other thing, if you're going to ink and the ink says waterproof, test it anyways. Don't trust but verify, right? Um, there's been times where I've used supplies and they say, oh, it's waterproof, and it's kind of waterproof, not really waterproof. So I just want to do a couple of different colors and do like a little nice swatch here. And again, doing things like this will help you learn control. It'll help you get some nice flat values. Now, if you want super flat, clean values where you have no blemishes over a large area, watercolor is not the thing to use. Um, The larger the area, the more inconsistencies you're going to have in watercolor, and that's really the nice part about watercolor. That is the happy accidents. That is the textural elements you get. The only way really to get a flat color is to use some kind of specialized acrylic that just dries one solid flat color, that there are no variations, there's no blemishes, or to do it digitally and go through a print press. Other than that, you're always going to have some kind of irregularities. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do a gradient. So gradient, we're going to go from dark to light. And what I think I'll do is, I think I'll just stick with this green so I have it on the brush. And in this case, I'm going to actually switch brushes. I can use any color. I think I'll keep it with the green. I'm going to use the flat brush because I want to do this flat area. So what I'm going to do, again, load this with dirty water. And I'm just going to put a coat of water down. Now, this isn't puddling. This is simply getting the paper ready to handle the watercolor so it can flow. But if you don't do this, you will get streaks. So maybe I'll do something like this where I don't put water down first, and then you guys can see the streaks. So gradient, I want to go from dark to light. And the first thing I'll do is I'm just going to add a lighter version of the color down. This is going to be kind of like my primer. And I'm just going to bring it down. And as I drag it down, it's going to get lighter and lighter. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to load my brush more with the pure color. I'm just going to focus right here on the top part. And I'm going to bring it down. Now, about here, I'm going to wipe off the excess in here. And then I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more. And then I'm going to wipe off the excess again. I'm actually going to use water. So I wiped it off in the water. It's damp. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to lift a little bit. So I keep wiping it off in the jar here. And then I'm going to get some nice little water. So I'm going to dip it in just a little bit of water. And then I'm going to start pulling down. And that's really the trick to do this. I'm going to dry my brush off on that paper towel so I can lift. Fix this area up a little bit. And then I'm going to come right back up to the top again a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit more. I'm going to bring this down. Wipe my brush off. I'm going to wipe it off on the towel, get a little bit of water in here, and just really bring it down. Now, I will lift it a bit, and that'll just help that water come down. And notice, so I'm going to lift it so you can see it. I don't have a pool of water, right? So the other mistake a lot of people make is they put too much water down and they get a pool of water. So you're not going to see that pool right there. All right, our next thing, I'm going to go use orange, and I'm going to use blue. So I'm going to make sure my brush is wiped off. I'm going to go in a little bit with this orange here that I have, and I'm going to paint it and bring it down. And again, your colors are going to change as you add water to it. So like a really nice dark bright orange, when watered down, it's not going to appear that way at all. And then I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to take a little bit of blue. Okay, so just a tiny bit of blue. And I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to go a little bit farther down here. And I'm going to bring this blue down. And I'm blending colors. Now, got my dirty water in. Blue and orange are complementary colors, which means they are opposites of each other. And when you combine opposites, you get browns and you get grays, and then you'll get some other colors in between. So there's my mix, right? So I'm going to start off. I'm going to wipe this off, make sure. This is why you want to use glass because you're getting the color that gets onto the glass, right? So I don't know if you can see it. There you go. And that's easy enough just to wipe off with a towel. And then every time you wash your water out, you're gonna have a clean source of water. So I'm gonna take this orange and I'm gonna start bringing it down. Now you can see the difference, right? So this is the orange that's not watered down, and you can see the vast difference in that color. And what I want to do right now is I want to start wiping off this excess, get a little bit of water, and I want to start bringing this down. I'm always wiping off that excess. Okay, and I'm just gonna bring it down a little bit more. And now I'm gonna kind of lift it, and I'm gonna come back in with the blue. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna wipe this excess off, bring this down with water, and bring these two colors together. I'm gonna go back to my orange. I'm gonna bring my orange right back into here. A little bit of blue. And you're gonna start seeing this gray color and brownish colors form. Now, come back in with some blue again. I'm just gonna start blending these colors right in here. And if you look, starting to get like a nice gray, right? And then if I take a little orange, you'll see I start getting a nice little brown. And what I'll do is I'll mix these colors next to each other so you can see. I'm just trying to blend these in a little bit. And so again, you're starting to see a little bit of brown, and you have that gray. So I'm gonna lift this up so you can see it a little bit clearer. Um, the light kind of makes it hard. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna make these colors next to it, and I'm gonna bring some more orange in, clean off my brush, come back here on the top, just bring this down. So I wish the camera could pick it up a little bit more. It picks up the gray a little bit more than it does the brown. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix these two colors right here so you can see them. So I'm gonna put some orange down, and then I'm gonna grab blue. Now Blue is stronger than orange, so you don't need as much blue. But this is something you should do with your primary colors. You should really just kind of mess around and see what kind of colors you can get. Uh, so this looks a little bit more brown on camera, but on my paper, it's a little bit more gray. Now, if I go stronger with the blue, and I use a little bit of orange, I will get more of a gray. And a lot of times when I want like a really nice gray, like a warm gray or even a cool gray, depending on my mixture, I'll make my own versus taking black and watering it down because that gray never quite looks right. This is more of a natural gray, something you're going to see more in nature. So when you use a natural gray in painting, it looks regular versus black it always looks a little bit off. So rarely do I ever make a gray with black. I will shade a color with black. So take red, make it into crimson. Take blue, make it into midnight blue. Or you can add gray, so like a paint gray, and that'll do it. Let's make a little bit more of a brown color. Tiny, tiny bit of blue. So this is way more orange than blue, and that will give you a brown color. Now, if you want a really nice, true dark brown, and again, it's hard to see with that light. Um, to get a really good brown, you can just mix yellow, red, and blue. You mix your primaries, you'll get a nice little brown. And then you could really play with your browns because by adding more red to your brown, it's going to warm it up. By adding more blue to your brown, it's going to darken it up. So there, hopefully, you should see that brown. You can see the difference between the orange right up there. So let's put a little bit of orange next to it. So here's the orange next to it, so you guys can see that difference in the color, right, side by side. Uh, Generally, when I'm mixing a gray, brown, rust color, I usually just use blue and orange. I do not like the brown that I get or the gray that I get with yellow and violet. It's kind of ugly. Same thing with the red and orange. It's an ugly brown and an ugly gray. So I think the one I'm happy with the most, and now you can really see now that it's drying, that it's really getting gray. And then in here at the gradient, you can really see that nice gray here, and then you can see that brownish color right there. So as it's drying, you're being able to see it. And then even though these colors went down flat, you can see that you're going to get little inconsistencies, and that's your textural element. So those, I want that on purpose. Again, so that's the great thing about using watercolor. Okay, so let's do some other techniques real fast. One of the things, so all of this is called wet on wet. That means you're putting water down on the paper and then you're putting wet paint on top of the water. So wet on wet. Now, when I create, say, a mass of color, I'm going to use blue because it's easier to see. And I'm just going to put a nice coat of blue down. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some water and I will just drop some water into it. And you're going to see that it's going to spread. And when this dries, it's going to create a unique texture. Um, so it's the texture that I want. The other thing, again, I'm going to do this with blue so you can see it easier. I'm going to do a little bit bigger wash here, and I'm going to go a little bit lighter with my color. So let's say I'm doing sky. So let's say this is my sky. Go a little bit darker here. Okay. I can take my tissue, and again, you need a clean tissue, and I can come in and I can list out my clouds. Now, you can always come back in afterwards and add some darker values around it. So if I wanted to add some grays underneath it, and then I can make this cloud stand out. Now, if I was using darker blue, it would stand out even more. I'm going to use my brush here, my round, and I'm just going to come in, add a little bit more blue. I want to do this when the paper's damp because I want to be able to blend this in. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. And so there's my nice little cloud that I have. There's another way to do clouds. And again, you just need dirty water. So I'm going to take a little bit of dirty glue, and I'm just going to come in. I'm just going to draw kind of like a cloud shape, right? I try to keep it as organic as possible. And then what I can do is I can come back in and trace the outside of this with water. Again, I'm using a little bit of dirty water so I can see it. And then I'm going to drop in my blue paint. And again, the paint is only going to go where there's water. Um, so again, you want the dirty water so you can see where you're adding stuff. Now this technique, you're going to get, I'm running out of blue here. Um, you're going to get these like harder edges on your clouds, and that's okay. As this starts to dry, so I'm going to let this dry for a minute. What I'm going to do is I'll come in with a damp brush, a little bit of water, but not enough water to put a puddle, and I will trace the inside of this cloud, and then I will take my tissue. And a lot of times I'll use the combination of both techniques. I'll use the tissue by itself, and then I'll use this more hard edge technique. But I can take, and again, you always want a clean portion of the tissue, so you just want to get rid of the tissue part that you use. And I'll just go dab around that line that I traced, and that will soften the edges up. And you'll have a cloud that doesn't have so many hard edges to it. Yeah. So fairly easy like that. And if you have little other specks and you want to get rid of them, just paint over them. Okay. So these are just a couple of quick techniques that you want to use. One thing I did not do, and I guess I'll do it on this one since this one's drying here. Um, there's Other things that you can experiment with. So for one thing, salt will create like a star effect. So if you just put like color down and then put some salt, I don't have any on me right now. It'll create kind of like a star pattern. Rubbing alcohol will create these like little swirl patterns, and um, you just really need to start experimenting with different materials. And this is why you don't want to use like expensive. You can just experiment, and you can just really see uh, kind of what's going on, different techniques that you can do. Uh, there's also blending with wet on wet. So let's let me get a little bit of blue, and I'm just going to put some blue down. I'm going to get some water here, put that down, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take green. Now, green and blue are analogous, meaning they're side by side on the color wheel. And to make green, you need blue. So what happens is these colors are harmonious. So I can add them together, and then I can just swirl it around and let them mix, and they'll kind of do their own thing. Um, some more water in here. So if I want to create like kind of like a marble-like effect, or just a little bit of swirly colors, and uh, just to create like a nice little effect, you always want to use colors that are analogous. Okay, so for this one, I could use green, yellow, green, blue, and then when the blue and the green mix together, you're going to get some blue green. And when this dries, it'll be very nice. So like yellow, orange, and red, or red, orange work really well together. Let's put a little bit of color down here real fast. So I just rehydrated some yellow. I'm going to throw some yellow in here. I don't have much. And I'm going to take some of this orange and drop some of this orange in here. And again, just going to let the water, gravity, do its effect. And add some more yellow here. I ran out of yellow, so I mixed some more yellow here. And again, just going to throw it in there. So you get this nice little blend. I'm going to drop some water. I'm going to drop in that water. I'm going to drop some more orange, and just kind of let this flow all over the place. And, and that's pretty much it. Let me move some of the stuff out of the way. Let's bring back this other paper. So again, you can see when you drop water, you're going to get some hard edges and hard lines, and you're going to get some random effects. When you do like the wet on wet and you blend analogous colors, you're going to get um, some nice textural effects. So like if I'm doing something where I wanted to show like heat or fire or flames, that's a good one. If I want to do something kind of like pond water, this would be kind of really good if I'm doing a pond or like a small lake. And then we have our little brownish orange that we had, the blue. You can see that ink did not bleed. A little bit of a wet on wet here with that. I believe I dropped some water in there too, so that spread out. Here are the two cloud techniques that we did, and here again you can see like mixing your blues and oranges. So if you want to get a better understanding, and I'd work on bigger sheets and I do a bunch of different things. One thing is I learned just to put in flat colors. I would do a couple of gradient bars. I would work on blending complementary colors. I'd work on blending analogous colors, again, colors that are side by side. Um, I would look at if you crinkle up saran wrap and put it down and put a book on top of it, when you pull it up, it creates a nice little texture. Different salts create different salt textures. Rubbing alcohol creates a very specific texture. Crumpled up paper towels, tissue, newspaper, those all make specific textures. Get an old toothbrush and you can create a splatter technique. In fact, let's do like a little splatter right now. I'm gonna do a little mini splatter right here with the orange. So you're gonna have to load your brush up, and then generally I put something down to protect because you can make a mess, right? So if you want to create like a nice little splatter effect, one nice thing is you can do something like this, let it dry, come back with a darker version of like a red orange or a darker version of an orange, and do a splatter technique on this after it's dry, and you can get some really cool effects with that too. So experiment, practice. Uh, I think the best quality about watercolor versus all other types of mediums is you can do things so fast that the learning curve is extremely fast. Versus acrylic, again, acrylic is a pain to set up. It's a pain to clean up. While it dries fairly fast, uh, you need canvas. It's a longer process. Oil is even a longer process than acrylic. Again, oils will take up to 6 months to dry. So the nice thing, I think the best aspect about watercolor and painting and illustration is um, that growth curve is much, much faster using watercolor than some other mediums. The other nice thing before I leave in the video, um, watercolor works great with black ink. It works great with brown ink, right? It works great with color pencils. Now, when you do use color pencils, you want to use the nicer color pencils. I use soft prism colors for working with watercolor. In fact, the nicer color pencils work so well with watercolor. If you show someone your illustration, they'll have a hard time telling what is color pencil and what is watercolor. And I mainly use that color pencil just to create certain textures or blend in certain colors, bring out something. So, like if I'm drawing a portrait or a face, I might want to use the colored pencils for the eyes. I might want to use it a little bit for the nose, a little bit for the lips. So again, these are things that you can do fairly easy. Do your warm up. I hope this didn't take too long. So again, this is your art teacher, Mr. Aguilar. Have fun exploring, have fun experimenting, but understand that this is a necessary process.